a captain in the National Guard and serve as an aviation brigade public affairs officer. Looking back at your 10-year full-time military career, you served 4 overseas deployments, including Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And you began specializing in public affairs and media relations. Now at Gitmo, as the media relations officer, you worked with more than 100 international and domestic reporters. You've told me that one of your proudest achievements was facilitating a media visit with the CBS News program, 60 Minutes, that became a 2-part series, winning an Emmy. Now, talking about the 60 Minutes feature on Gitmo, you said it was, quote, huge for the military there, and most of the colonels in charge were very against it. But you fought it hard and worked very closely with the producer and the base commander to get everybody to play nice. Right. So here are my questions about this. How did you get your superiors who are against the project to come around to your point of view? What were their objections? And what were the producers' requests that were denied or modified by you?
It's a good question. And yeah, it was a huge challenge and definitely one of the hardest things, but most funnest I've had to do in my career. So it basically starts off, with relationships. And I developed and started a relationship with the 60 Minutes producer way in advance. Actually, within about almost a year of them coming to the island, they had been working this project on their end. We worked it on our end. And so it all started just with corresponding and working directly with one producer, and he worked with one public affairs person, one military person, to get everybody on board with what was going to happen with this huge project. I believe at the time, if I give a little background, that CBS had been there before, but I don't think 60 Minutes had ever been there before. So it was kind of new territory for everybody. The reason people were against it, at least like the higher ups, is because to them, this was just another media outlet. They weren't looking forward to having to deal with such a big production. We had media on the island every single week. So this was nothing new to them to have to deal with journalists. But at the same time, me and my boss, the public affairs people, were trying to tell them and convince them, this is a huge audience. This isn't just a newspaper from Switzerland or France or whatever trying to do their little local piece. This is like a huge, huge global, worldwide audience that we can use to get our message out. But again, the colonels, the higher ups, the base commanders and all that, they were more like, they're still not going to tell the right story or our story. They're going to want to focus on the controversial stuff like everybody else kind of has been doing. So that was where the objections were. And then they were like, this is a big global piece that if we get the wrong message out or they want to try to nitpick certain things, then of course we have an even bigger audience that's going to not like what's going on, So I basically tried to get a very, very strong bond with the producer. I worked very hard over the phone, over just everything we could to try to get on the right page and I needed to really understand what is it that you're looking for, and here's what we can offer. So, and then what ended up happening was, the producer brought his little team down and they came to the island before doing any kind of actual production and met with me. We got a very specific, sheet request on what they wanted to do, who they wanted to talk to, what their intentions were, and what kind of message they were going to put out. And then I would take that to the colonels or the commanders and be like, here's what they're looking for. Here's what they can offer. And, and they just be like, well, why should I trust them over other, reporters and stuff. And so basically it was coming down to just a lot of back and forth between me and the producer and me and the commanders, and being kind of a bridge. And then finally we had them sit down and meet and be like, here the producer would talk to the commander and be like, this is what I want to ask you, and here's what we want to portray. And the commander would be like, it kind of came down to a little bit of a gentleman's agreement on, I'll give you this if you give me that. And it was basically kind of just trust. And because I've been working with the producer for months and months and months in advance, I felt that I trusted him. And basically I had the trust of the commanders. And so it was kind of like my word, it was at stake of like, this guy is legit. He will produce a good product that highlights us, the military, in a good way. You have my word. You can fire me if they don't, whatever. So that's kind of what it came down to. And I know it's kind of a long answer, but I hope that kind of shows how we did that process.
Well, I found that fascinating. First off, because of the skills that you needed in consensus building and negotiation really were evident there. As well, you really have a good idea, apparently, of what it's like to work with a good producer. I can see if there are people that are working in that field, they're nodding their head right now saying, yes, that was an excellent experience. Well, let's stick on Gitmo for a minute. I mean, on the 60 Minutes feature particularly. You say that when the program mentioned military censors,
right.
it aggravated you and your people, and you told me we never censored anything. We screened for classified information getting out. So this is an important distinction and applies to many interview situations. What methods did you use to ensure classified information was not inadvertently let out? Did you pre-screen their questions or give them a list of acceptable topics? Did you have a post-production or pre-broadcast screening agreement?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm glad I'm able to kind of clarify this on the record. First of all, with 60 Minutes, we didn't do anything different than any other media. We treated them exactly the same. They had the same requirements, restrictions, whatever. And the way that worked, I was the person who facilitated the media, coming on the island, and I made sure before they got here that they did. We set the expectation bar for them. I would explain to them, this is what you're going to get access to, blah, blah, blah. And this is what you're absolutely not going to get access to. We made sure we set their expectations at a level that they could not argue with. And we did the exact same with 60 Minutes. When they first get to the island, they already have an idea of what's going to happen when they get there. And they usually spent about 5 to 7 days on the island, and we give tours and they get interviews and all that. So not only are they prepared for what they're going to see that week before they arrive, we also sit them down when they get to our office and before we take them, to the other side, and we show them kind of what's called an operational security review. We kind of show them, like, here's the kind of pictures you are allowed to take and you're not allowed to take due to operational security. We're not censoring anything. You can shoot anything. You can ask any questions. You can talk to anybody, but you are not going to be able to get inside the camp and talk to a detainee. That was a big one that reporters wanted to do, was interview a detainee, and that is not something we're allowed to do due to the operational security. We can't show their identity and all that. So we made sure it was very clear to them what they were allowed to have. So that's already the second point where they're kind of like, they have their expectations known. And then the other is, you asked about post-screening and all that. First of all, we don't screen any of their questions. We could care less what they ask. We don't ask whatever you want, as controversial, as direct, as whatever as you want. We'll answer anything. There's nothing to hide. Part of our mission statement down there was transparency. So we have no problem with whatever you want to ask. So after the interviews, and we don't edit the interviews or anything, they can take the raw footage and just do whatever they want with it. But before any footage or photo or anything is allowed to leave the island, we screen it back in our offices the day before they leave, again, for operational security, to make sure that we didn't slip up and accidentally let a face be shown that wasn't supposed to or whatever. And again, they're already aware of that. And so they kind of agree to those terms before they even come to the island. So there was never any controversy or argument with that. They had a very distinct understanding of what was going to happen when they got there. So with 60 Minutes, however, they brought 2 cameramen. They kind of brought a whole big production down there that we didn't quite have the manpower to manage, but we made it work, and they ended up bringing down specifically one person just to do their editing. So while they were capturing all their footage in one area, they'd bring it back and edit it. And I had to have one soldier just sit there literally all day for 10 hours a day and just watch him edit his footage so that nothing got out. We're trying to let them take all they could. Yeah, it was a tedious and long process, but we were very convinced that this would be worth it, So normally we would just kind of look at a couple pictures and be like, this one's okay, this one's okay. But with 60 Minutes, it was hours and hours and hours of footage that we had to review, and, simply just to make sure nothing classified got out. And sure enough, we did great. It was a long process, and it was about a 10-day long thing overall, but they were satisfied with what they got. We were satisfied with, how everything went, and pretty much everybody was happy. And again, we had, when the story aired, we had no clue what it was going to be. We were kind of sitting there with fingers crossed, like, gosh, I hope we didn't let something out, because again, we can't see their product. We don't know what they're going to make of it. We just screened the raw footage. So, and it ended up being, like you said, a 2-part series. the first part was about the military commissions, which we don't have a whole lot of involvement in. The second was kind of like life in Gitmo, which is what we're all involved in. And we were, you know, on edge on how it was going to look, but it ended up airing wonderfully and everybody was so happy with it. And we were just like, whew, that was a relief. So it ended up being a very good thing.
Right. Well, congratulations again. What a professional achievement for you. That's a wonderful story. I heard two words there, preparation and transparency. And we can't prepare for situations like this enough. And that allows us to be transparent because we know what our messages are. Let me stay with Gitmo now, not the 60 Minutes piece. You mentioned that part of your job was as advisor to higher ranking officials and that you, quote, taught them how to speak with journalists appropriately. So that sounds like a very delicate job. And my last question involves this aspect of public relations. What tactics did you use to show deference to their ranks, but at the same time, get them to follow your lead? What were some of the more difficult moments and how did you handle them?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially with the military. You know, I'm a captain and I'm dealing with colonels and generals who are way above my level. And of course, there's the military courtesy and respect that I have to follow. But yet at the same time, you know, I'm the one they're kind of trusting and turning to make sure they look good and say the right thing and do the right thing on camera, on the record and all that. So the way I've handled that, first of all, is through experience. I've gained a lot of experience with all my deployments on how to do this right. So I'm able to kind of take that to the higher ups and be like, this is what I've done here and it worked. So trust me, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to help you. I'm here to make you look good. It has nothing to do with me. I'm behind the scenes. I want you to shine. I want you to rock. And here's how you're going to do that. So it's basically just being like that direct and just assuring them I'm here for you, you know, and I'm going to make sure you're a success. So once I kind of win their trust and they can validate that with me, then I just go into like, here's why you need to talk to the media. You know, you are the commander, you are the spokesperson and the representation of this mission, whether it be Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, whatever. And, you know, people are going to want to talk to you. I may be privy on all the command messages and all that, but they don't want to talk to me. You know, I'm rehearsed. They don't want to see me. So you're now front and center and you need to know how to handle every single question that is thrown at you. Because like I said before, we didn't screen anything. Some organizations and some missions, I haven't experienced really, but I know that they're required to see, you know, I want to see your questions ahead of time. We've never done that. In fact, 60 Minutes asked me, you know, are you going to look at our questions ahead of time? And I'm like, absolutely not. And they even went as far as to like, are you monitoring our internet to see what our questions are? You know, because we're saying, yeah, they kind of accused me of that. And I was like, I can assure you, I could care less what your questions are. My commander will answer anything you want. Absolutely. You know, take as long as you want. The interviews ended up going for about, you know, like 2 hours long, 2 or 3 hours long when 60 Minutes was there, because they just were throwing every question they could possibly get on the record, you know, and we encourage that. So, yeah, so that's how we kind of, again, like I said, we would just sort of, I would convince the commanders that, you know, the media is necessary. And as long as you understand what our message is, you know, we have to get it out there. Transparency, again, was in our mission statement. So until they took that word out, we had to be on the record and be front and center for the reporters, no matter what. Right. And I think the last part of your question was, you know, what are your difficult moments? And I would say Gitmo just overall was the hardest, the most challenging environment I've ever had to work in because of the negative press that comes out of there. And, you know, the military people, they change jobs down there every 9 to 10 months. You know, there's a new commander every year. And it's the same mission though, but they're so burned out on reporters, they're so tired of the negative stories that come out that they don't want to deal with it. But when my wave came in, we were kind of like, we kind of changed the tone. We shifted the tone a little bit because of the way we handle the press. You know, we kind of put our arm around them and said, hey, you know, do us a favor and we'll do you a favor kind of thing. And I don't know that they'd had that approach before. So as long as we gave them a good, transparent interview and all that, then they gave us a pretty good story. So it was that simple. And I don't know, I guess they hadn't seen that before. So that's how we handled it.
I recognize that you really instilled trust in them, in yourself with them, and that was very essential. And I'm so glad you highlighted that. Andi, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me kind of speak about this because it's something that a lot of people don't understand. And again, you only hear the negative side of it. So there's good things going on down there. So I'm glad. Thank you again for letting me be able to talk about it.
Okay. Okay.